So I'm sure the right buyer is just right around the corner. So, anybody have anything to announce? Yes.
Was YouTube put on last week, your sermon?
I believe I did.
I missed it, I guess.
Okay, I'll double check, but I'm pretty sure I did.
Okay, well,
It was there.
I have it then.
Okay. Anything else? Yeah, I have 6 subscribers. I have to laugh because in order to do live streaming, I need 100. So we're not going to be doing that, so that's okay. Only 94 to go, absolutely. Okay, anybody have anything else to announce? If you'll put May 20th on your calendars, that will be Bobby Graham's memorial service. And it will be about 3 o'clock, so right after here, we'll just all go up to the chapel there on 1st Street, okay? And they were going to do it Mother's Day, but I said, well, other people might have other plans for Mother's Day, so we're going to do it on May 20th. Okay, anything else? I'm pretty sure it's the 13th is Mother's Day, so May 20th is also You're still in April. Yeah, no, May. Never mind. Shut my mouth. Okay, so I guess if we're ready, if you'll turn to page 20 in your hymnals, please. And let's have a little cha-cha. Work wonders from within. That's where to look within. There's no use looking somewhere else for power that you need to win. Work wonders from within. Be sure you look within. Just take your mind from outer fears. Don't think it's too late to begin. In you, in me, there's power to be. In you and me, there's power that will set us free. My course is up to me. Of course it's up to me. So I'll set my mind to use my power in wonders I want to see. And such wonders there are. Last week, we talked about the fact that the readings, everything always seems to fit together whether we plan it or not. And last week was really extraordinary because we had Amazing Grace. Sandra came up and read from the book, right? Was it Everyday Grace? And there was something else that had the word grace in it. Oh, well, actually my talk had the word grace in it. I was like, wow, grace must be really important at this time. So, let's all be quiet for just a moment. Take a deep breath. Relax. Let go. And today we recognize that we are one with all that is. That we are one with that which created us, one with that which lives in us, and one with all of the universe. With this acknowledgement and with this knowledge, we know that our words have power. We know that when we have a thought and we speak our word aloud, we are creating. And each of us is conscious of our ability to create and conscious of what we create. Today is absolutely perfect. I declare and affirm that it is all right with the world. We must be the change we want to see and see the world we want to live in. And let us say together, and so it is. Amen. Thank you. And our reader today is Mr. Schwally. Come on up, give him a hand.
Specs. Good afternoon, everybody.
Good afternoon.
Our talk today comes from Science of Mind. You live in God. It is not only my right and my privilege to walk in the abundance God has for me. It's my responsibility. And Jan Denise said that. We are automatically blessed. Our prayer is answered before it is uttered. Science of Mind. Now, can you imagine what it would be like to wake up knowing that everything you need that day would come to you easily? Can you imagine what it would be like to really trust God as your resource for everything good? How would it feel to begin every new day knowing you cannot fail? This is the state of mind in which you were designed to live. Trust and faith are natural. Fear and panic come from unnatural negative beliefs that steal your joy. Your mind was not made for negative thinking. It was made for you to enjoy life affirming ideas and emotions. To return your natural state of trust, you must remember this truth each day. You live in God. You are surrounded and immersed in the power that creates and sustains your life. That power wants to give all the good it is to you. There is no power in the universe that seeks to harm you. Knowing this truth will keep you free from worry and anxiety. It will free you from feelings of inadequacy and fear. It will transform your life. Stop worrying that you will run out of money. Stop fearing that your good will end. Whenever one channel dries up, two more will appear. Trust God. It knows what it's doing. And the affirmation? Spirit is my source and supplier. I rely on God exclusively for everything good.
I like that. Thank you, Joe. Imagine waking up and not worrying about anything. I like that line particularly, that we allow things to rob us of our joy. Whether that's events in the world or anything else, or people, we don't want them to rob us of our joy. So let me start off today with a question. Who among you is perfect? Better see some hands going up. It's not a trick question. You are perfect. I know Shirley's not wanting to raise her hand. Oh well. You are just as God created you. Just as God created you. Okay, and yes, it was a trick question. So, how many of you think you might fall into the category of perfectionist? You really got to do it right. Okay? How many of you have, in the recent past, chided yourself for not doing something well enough? That too. How many of you have said, I'm kind of a little bit of a failure because I didn't do my best? I don't know. And I had an example of that this past week. As you know, I'm studying real estate, and it's a lot of studying and a lot of things to learn. And the first course I just finished and had to take a final exam, and I only got an 86. And my first reaction was, well, it's not an A. And my second reaction was, you passed the damn thing, move on. But my first thought was, didn't do well enough. Should have studied more, blah, 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 blah. So, for some people, perfectionism means wanting everything to be just right. And sometimes they beat their heads against a wall to make it just right. It also sometimes means setting impossible standards. Have you set standards for yourself? Have you set standards for other people? Probably. There's also the thinking that everything is not quite good enough. One of the many inherent difficulties with that approach is that nothing in our lives achieves a state of static perfection, right? It changes every heartbeat. So you could say, oh, look, it's perfect. Oh, it's gone. So maybe we need to say to ourselves, what if I allowed it, as in the reading, to be just perfect the way it is? Another difficulty with perfectionism is that our perspective, if you will, differs from everyone else. So one person's perfect might be our, seriously? You're kidding, right? Another difficulty with perfectionism as a goal is when we don't see that what is enough for right now. For right now. And if we don't think something is enough, do you think that cuts into our gratitude just a wee bit? Probably. So we just need to keep working on that state of being, that state of understanding and acknowledging and being grateful for what is. How many of you have had days when you're completely dissatisfied? That's occasionally, right? You're completely dissatisfied. You don't like how things turned out. You don't like how people are. You don't like when you went out in the world how people behaved. You just have that day. Who is responsible for being satisfied? Yeah. Have you ever known someone who was rarely, if ever, satisfied with life? Maybe that person wasn't satisfied with you. Maybe they're not satisfied with anything. You might have even found yourself trying to be more perfect. And have you tried to be more perfect for another person? Come on, you all have. Fess up. Yeah, good. Guess what, though, when you do that, it's called a no-win situation. And why is that? Because what other people think of me is none of my business. And I need to let it go at that. And I'm not saying we shouldn't always do our best, that's who we are. But what if we could be people who live in perfection without angst, without making anyone else wrong or anyone else inadequate? Have you ever said to anybody you know, this will be especially for parents, you're such a disappointment? Or said something that could have implied that they were not quite living up to your standards? We just need to change our definition of perfectionism. So we're going to assume that everything is as good as it can be right now. And why do I think that's true? Because it is what is right now. And I can either say this is perfect in this now moment, or I can complain and whine and make a big deal about it. And what if the now moment is all we need to be concerned with? That's all we need to worry about, is this exact moment. So instead of aspiring to be perfect, I believe I am perfect right now. What I want to do is more perfectly express the being that I am, the divinity that I am. I think we've all had those moments of, yeah, God is perfect, blah, blah, blah. I'm a part of God, therefore I'm perfect, blah, blah, blah. Go tell that to my mother. Go tell that to my spouse. Go tell that to my children. They're not buying it, and neither am I. We go down that cynical path. Because over the years, we've been fed a steady stream of messages. How many of you have heard, nobody's perfect? All the time, right? How about everyone is flawed? I'm only human. So we also tend to equate perfect, by the way, with liking what shows up. Because if we like it, it's perfect. And if we don't like it, it is not. It sucks. We just can't get to perfect from there. So I believe that having peace within us and not being robbed of our peace as well as our joy is to take a different perspective on perfectionism. And this is how God is showing up right here, right now, as all of you. You're showing up perfectly as God right now. So I believe that perfection is the nature of reality. That's reality with a capital R. I also believe that perfection is not an opinion, just as God is not a person. It is not an opinion. It's actual fact. It is a spiritual quality and a physical fact, and it is neither theoretical nor hypothetical. In Matthew, we read the words, "Be ye therefore perfect." And people go, "Oh, great. How can I live up to that?" Was that what was being said? Is that you had to do everything right and everything by the book and do everything that anybody expected of you? No. Okay? That was not what it was about. What it was saying is, it was be perfect as your Father in heaven is perfect. You're part of God. Be God's perfection in the world. Now, if you think of yourself as miserable sinners, which we've been told by various religions, that you're bound to fail, that you're powerless, that you're ignorant, and so forth, there's really no up path from there. You have to abandon it completely. And I know that you guys don't think that. We know there's much more to us than a body driven by a remarkable brain. By the way, our brains are still not understood by science. Still don't know what goes on in many areas of the brain. They're just kind of guessing at it. So we are souls. We are spiritual beings having a human experience. And each of us is having a unique experience. Because you have to be who you are. How many of you have tried to be someone you're not? I know I have over the years in various ways. I tried to be someone I'm not. So let me share with you a wonderful Sufi story about a person who chose not to be exactly who they are, as is, perfect. One day a young man went to visit his very aged great-grandfather. And when he arrived, he saw that the elderly man was very upset and trembling. And he said, "Why, great-grandfather, are you so upset?" And the old man said, "I know this is nearly my last moment, and soon I will be facing God." And the young man says, "But you've led a good life. You've led a wonderful life." The old man says, "But I'm worried about something. I have a feeling he's going to ask me." And the young man says, "What could that possibly be?" And he said, "Well, he won't ask me, 'Zuzia, why were you not a Moses?' Because if he asked me that, I would say, 'Because you didn't give me the qualities of a Moses.' So that will be no problem. And I know God will not ask, 'Why were you not a rabbi, like Rabbi Akiba?' And of course I would say, 'Because you never gave me the qualities of Rabbi Akiba.'" Then the young man said, "Then what is it that you're afraid of? Why do you tremble?" And the old man said, "I weep and I tremble, because what he probably will ask me, 'Zuzia, why were you not Zuzia? Why were you not the best Zuzia you could be? The best thing you could have been?' He said, "And I will have no answer. All my life I tried to be a Moses, or a rabbi, or another one of the splendid holy ones. And it is only now I see that all I needed to do was to be me, with all the gifts I was given, the best Zuzia I could be. How will I raise my eyes to him and tell him that I thought so poorly of his powers of creation that I thought I was not worthy unless I tried to be someone other than what he created?" Hear that? That I thought so poorly of God's creative powers that I thought I could do better. Gives you a different kind of perspective. So who are we to say that anything about us is a mistake? Where is our trust? Trust is a biggie. For that matter, who are we to claim that any other person is a mistake? Have you judged anyone this week? Yeah. Have I said, man, what a waste of air? Possibly. Do I have the right to say that? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. That's like saying God made a mistake there. The universe made a mistake. So I know we get discouraged because we think perfection is an ideal. We think that only people like Jesus or Buddha could make the grade. Many of people would attribute perfection to Jesus, for example, and deny it in themselves. The irony is that Jesus attributed perfection to himself because he would not deny it to anyone. But we've missed that part of the message. As an enlightened teacher, he knew the truth about himself, and he said, specifically, it was the truth about everyone. The flip side of the coin is that when we do not know the truth about ourselves, like poor Zuzia, we try to be someone else. We sell ourselves short. And it's just as problematic that we also tend to have false opinions of the people around us. Let's face it, if we don't understand ourselves, how can we understand other people? It's interesting that we have this somewhat contradictory view of God and human beings, but if there's only God, and there's only life, and there's only one substance, and there's only one essence, then God has only itself to work with, through, and upon, and that's pure science of mind. So that which infinite life creates is out of its own nature and being. Does an apple tree give pears? Does a duck give birth to coyotes? Hopefully not, because that could turn out very badly. So what does God give birth to? All of you. Okay, all of us. And our nature must be the same as the one that is our source. When you scoop a cup of water, have you ever gone to the beach and wanted to build sandcastles, so you got your bucket and got some water, right, to go wet down the sand? When you scoop up that cup of water, let me ask you this, is it still the ocean? It's still the ocean. So at the risk of repeating myself, let's apply this answer, which seems completely rational and reasonable, to the idea of perfection, that from which we come, just like the cup of water, is God. We are its nature. Okay? Since infinite life is God, all life must be inherently divine. Jesus said, you are the children, you are the heirs to the kingdom. But we forgot that. We thought maybe we have to earn it. He also said the kingdom of God is within you. He didn't say someday, he said right now. Not someday in the future when you get it right. There is no separation between essence and what essence becomes. So as I said, there are those traditional views of God that many people cling to, and they congregate to worship this one all-powerful God and seem to feel the need to apologize for being only human, right? I'm just so worthless. I mean, there's prayers that start out with, I'm so unworthy, I'm so worthless. But that viewpoint does not help us. Because if we are so humble and so self-deprecating and so flawed, isn't it only right and fair that we help other people see their flaws? I mean, we've admitted that we're flawed, so surely we could tell other people how flawed they are. Because we're just being helpful. I've heard people say, I don't hold anyone to a higher standard than the one to which I hold myself. I don't know about you, but I don't find that very comforting. The person who makes such a claim is presuming that his or her standards are the last word in how things should be. The message at its core is no one is quite up to snuff as I am. So when we indulge in our perfectionism, we choose the trivial over the truly important. We blur the line between doing our best, which is a great idea, and meeting arbitrary expectations like I did with my test. I really wanted 100. Wanted 100%, didn't get it. Moving on. We don't want to admit that hidden in the stated desire of having things perfect is a less noble and lofty truth, which is this: I want it done my way. I want it done the way I like it. Is that your God self talking? Not really. But we would have the freedom to release those judgments and never again have to fret over another person disappointing us and taking away our peace. We would never again find ourselves asserting that we know better. We would never again feel compelled to tell someone to do it our way, although there's an exception. For example, if it involves major property damage. If the person is backing up a trailer and you say, "Stop, you're about to go over the cliff." Always a good thing to do. Tell them that it's not the way to back up the trailer. But most of the time, that's not what's at stake. So we would never again find ourselves frowning and saying they should have done this and they should have done that, and we wouldn't say it to ourselves either. We would never again choose an issue over a human being. And in being so enlightened, we will find that we have chosen peace over strife. So why is it so important to avoid judging people and situations? Well, because if you can't be at peace with what is, you will never, ever be at peace. The word perfect has an interesting etymology. You know, I love that, sort of how words come to be. It comes from the Latin perfectio, and it means completing. From there it moves to 13th century French, parfait, meaning completing and wholeness. Other definitions include lacking nothing, undiluted, faithfully reproducing the original, and especially, and I like this line, as good as it is possible to be. All of you do all the good that you possibly can, given the moment, given where you are. Okay, each of you, every day is determined to be loved. Okay? So as good as is possible to be. You will notice there is no parenthetical, as good as I think it is possible to be. So don't go there. Today, just as it is right here with all of us gathered together, is perfection. I did at my treatment to start the service was that we acknowledge our oneness and that all is perfect. Nothing can make it any less so. I dare say many people, if not most people, think of themselves, who has said I'm a work in progress? Or thought it? A rough draft, a cheap knockoff, a flawed copy. They are determined to see the glass as half empty all the time. And how we choose to see determines what we see. So let me close with a brief story that demonstrates why what we choose to see and believe about life is so important. A wise sage came upon a man walking along the road. He was looking very downcast, very dejected. The man held up a tattered and ragged cloth bag, and he said, "All that I own in this world barely fills this miserable, wretched, ragged sack." And then he resumed his walking. At that moment, the sage came up behind the man and grabbed his bag and ran down the road. Having lost everything, now the man burst into tears, more miserable than ever. He walked slowly, not even bothering to chase the person who had taken his worldly belongings. The sage, however, simply ran around the next bend, and he put the bag in the middle of the road. In a few moments, the unhappy man came around the bend and saw his bag, and he laughed with joy, and he shouted, "My sack! My sack! I thought it was gone forever." Watching from the bushes, the sage chuckled to himself. "Change your mind, my son. Get happy." One moment the sack was pitiful. Its contents were pitiful. A few moments later, that sack was transformed into something valuable. So did the sack change? No. What changed? His attitude. Traditional religions are built on the philosophy that all human beings are broken. We are not broken. We are who we are, even if sometimes we show up as conscious beings and sometimes we don't. But that is transitory. Truth goes on forever. I know it can be difficult to think of yourself as perfect, but do you remember when you were very, very, very young? Life was perfect, wasn't it? It was just one good thing after another, one excitement after another, one discovery after another. Life was perfect, and so were you. So I challenge you to go for a day, a week, a month, a lifetime, not giving anyone the impression that they are less than perfect, and remembering all the time that you and they already are. Namaste. So will someone come up and lead the affirmation, please?
I will.
Okay, thank you.
Shall we read together? Every day, in every way, I get better and better. Better at living, better at loving, better at being exactly who I am. I bless each moment of my life and every person I encounter. I see perfection wherever I look, including my mirror, because I look with love and compassion. And so it is.
I threw in that mirror thing just in case you guys weren't thinking of you being absolutely perfect. Huh? What a reflection. Yes, let's reflect on that. So I had a request for a song I actually haven't done in a while, and but it's sort of an old favorite. So, and of course, as many lyric sheets that I have say adapted lyrics, because you know me, I can't leave a lyric alone. So some of the background singers in this don't sing what I sing. That's just because they're not enlightened yet, and it's okay. Not that that's a judgment or anything. Sometimes I'm weak, but love is strong. Spirit fills me with a song. I'll be satisfied as long as I choose to walk close to thee. Just a closer walk with thee. Granted Spirit, let me see daily walking close to thee. Let it be, sweet Lord, let it be. When this human life is through, and before I start anew, guide me gently, safely to where I've been before, Hey, everyone. Just a closer walk with thee. Granted Spirit, let me see daily walking close to thee. Let it be, sweet Lord, let it be. Would you hold your tithes, your gifts, your love offerings close to your hearts? Please say with me the Heartlight offering affirmation. I gladly share my overflowing abundance with a community that nurtures my heart and soul. And I give thanks for all of your gifts, knowing that they are the lifeblood of our beautiful community. And let us say together, and so it is. Amen. Okay, so let's be quiet for a moment, and I'd like us to call to mind the feeling of gratitude. Today I am grateful for what is. I am grateful for the people in my life. I am grateful